Hi, everybody. So today we're going to be learning how to level up your stakeholder engagement and really how to recognize where your stakeholders are in the various stages of engagement when you're trying to drive change. So there are a few steps in order to drive engagement, and these are 7 different steps. And we're going to discover each and every one of them so that you can identify where your stakeholders stand. So the first one is resistance, where there's really no alignment, and actually you don't want any of your stakeholders to be here because they actually can really hinder your efforts to drive change. This is where people are really resistant and against the change that you want to make, and they manifest that in 2 different ways. It can be either active resistance or passive resistance. Active resistance is where their behaviors and their actions are actually illustrating that they're against the change and they're opposing the change, where passive resistance is where they are manifesting it in a sense of withdrawing their support and participation, but they can also be in the background sabotaging your efforts. So the next step is actually compliance. Now, you would think that that would be a good place to be, or let's say the first level of where you want your stakeholders to be, but actually this is not an effective way to drive change. They're still not aligned. They're actually just seeing the change as inevitable, and they're just going ahead with following the crowd. And this can be because of 2 reasons. One can be they just don't see the point of spending any energy in fighting the change, so they're just complying to it. Or they actually might be scared and threatened by the negative consequences if they resist the change that you're trying to drive. Now, the problem with this is over time, they might fall into resistance, but most times it would be in a passive form. But they're really not helping you to move your initiative forward. So you don't want your stakeholders to be in this stage. The next step is agreement. And now this is a very neutral position, actually, is that they're accepting on an intellectual level that this direction makes sense, right? But on an emotional level, on a behavioral level, they're not spending any energy actually supporting that change. It's very neutral. And they're not like proactively driving the change that you want to drive. So where you want to actually get your stakeholders, or the majority of your stakeholders, is to the first step, which is actually buy-in. Now, most people actually think buy-in is where everyone has to be and it stops there. We're going to discover the other levels, but buy-in is an important milestone for you. This is where everybody's aligned in words, right? So this is where they're committed. It's the first level of commitment. They're positively viewing the change that you want to drive. They're engaged on an emotional level, but they're not taking actions yet to actually support the change and move that forward. So there's a whole recipe of how to get people into buying into your idea, and I actually can support you in how you do that, how you design that strategy in order to get your stakeholders into buying into your idea. But the general gist is that your change strategy is quite sound. You're communicating, you're educating them, and providing the adequate information on why we're doing this change, what are the benefits of this change, and the most important part of getting people to buy in is actually taking the time to address their concerns, right? Because the reason why they're not buying in is because they have this belief system that the change that we're trying to drive is actually going to negatively impact them, or maybe even not positively impact them. So you really want to spend that time to understand where is that resistance, and how can you, through your change strategy and action plan, how can you alleviate those concerns for them so that they can actually step into buying into your idea, and even ideally supporting with actions. So that's where it moves to the next step, where you're really working with your stakeholders to take the first baby steps in illustrating and supporting your change, right? At this step, those stakeholders that are doing these initial steps, they haven't fully committed to your change. They're just testing the waters. And what can happen over time is that they can either move into fully committing and aligning to your change, which is fantastic. That's where you want all your stakeholders, at least the most influential stakeholders that are actually important in driving your change and making it successful. But it could also actually go the other way, whereby they do some baby steps, and then because you're not engaged with them, because you're not supporting them, they can actually slip back into the lower levels where they're just resisting or complying. So as I mentioned, buy-in is a great milestone, but you want to get your key stakeholders actually committed. And what that means is that they're believers in your change. They're actually taking actions and embodying behaviors that are supporting and moving your initiative of change forward, right? They believe in the change completely, deeply, on an emotional and an intellectual level. And actually being in this state actually helps them overcome challenges, right? Because every change has challenges, every change has discomfort. But because they are emotionally and mentally believing in it, and they've actually adopted those behaviors, they can actually they have sight over the goal that they want to achieve, and they're really they have the right mindset in order to support that change. However, the only little tweak is that it's not their top priority. So they may have other initiatives that are coming and kind of contradicting with your change initiative. And so that way you're not fully moving forward at the speed that you would like to. So sometimes they could actually, that movement, that progress can be hindered because there are other conflicting initiatives. So the ideal thing that you want, especially your top leadership, is to get them fully aligned. This is the ultimate level of engagement, whereby they are truly unstoppable. And what this means is that they're walking the talk. They are literally have put your change initiative at the top of their priorities, and they're making sure that every single thing that they're doing is actually aligned with the change that you want to make. They're embodying that change, and they're actually becoming evangelists for you, where you don't need to do all that effort. They're actually supporting you in getting everybody else on board and really moving that ship forward in the most effective and efficient way. So now you know what are the different levels of engagement that you have to be mindful of when you're driving change and getting your key stakeholders climbing that ladder. And if you have any questions about how you can actually achieve those goals and move those people higher and higher, and ultimately getting your majority of your stakeholders in full alignment, feel free to reach out. Thank you so much.